Good morning, everyone. I was so excited to see everybody and talking offline that we're a little bit late starting, so I apologize. The Ways and Means Committee will come to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Scott,
Present.
Commissioner Baker McCormick, Commissioner Marecki,
Here.
Commissioner Kinlock,
Present.
Commissioner Anderson,
Here.
Vice Chair Bejun,
Here.
Chair Varga.
Here,
You have a quorum present.
thank you. Next item.
Next item, item B, Chairwoman's remarks.
Thank you very much. I see everyone is seated. Members, as always, if you have questions, please turn your mic on. Otherwise, please turn it off so I know who is in line to speak. Thank you. It's been a very good budget season so far, and I want to acknowledge that today we have our chairwoman, the Honorable Alicia Bell, joining us. Welcome. Do you have any remarks you would like to make at this time?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Okay. We got to give our dues where dues are meant to be given. Okay. I'm just glad to see everybody here. We've had a perfect attendance by members so far, so I'm very pleased. Next item, Madam Clerk.
Item C, approval of the minutes from the August 9th, 2022 meeting.
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been moved and supported. It has been passed out and it's on your desk. So if you would take a couple of seconds just to go through it, just in case someone might have corrections. I see no hands. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Item D, unfinished business. Item number 1, requesting commission approval of the recommended comprehensive executive budget appropriations ordinance for fiscal year 2022, 2023, and the projected budget for fiscal year 2023, 2024.
Thank you. As always, we have our fiscal advisor here with us, and I would like to call on Mr. Mark Abbo to talk about what we're going to do today.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Busy day today, actually. We've got 5 departments reporting. The first on our agenda is the Third Circuit Court, followed by the Indigent Defense Services Department. The Treasurer's Office follows them. We will talk about retirement after that. And then afterwards, we will talk about parks. I think everybody should plan for a break and for lunch right after the third presentation by the Treasurer's Office. I think we'll probably need it. These have been intense. But thank you. I would then like to turn the meeting over to Judge Kenny so he can introduce his staff and have their presentation.
Good morning, Judge Kenny. Welcome.
Good morning. And thank you, Commissioner Varga, and my greetings to Madam Chair, Commissioner Bell, and to all who are here. Thank you for this opportunity to be here. And before I begin talking about the Third Circuit Court budget, I want to take a brief moment to introduce the members of our team here who are not only trusted advisors, but have a degree of expertise that extends beyond my wheelhouse. And I'm grateful, as I think we all are, to have expertise that's provided to us. First of all, let me indicate that it's been my great privilege to serve on the Third Circuit Court bench for 26 years. And my term ends at the end of this year, and I will be retiring. And the court is going to be in the extraordinarily capable hands of Judge Patricia Frizard, who sits to my left, who has been selected by the Michigan Supreme Court to lead our court forward. And we are very fortunate indeed to have her. Seated to my right is Lynn Roberts, who is our CFO, who makes things wonderfully clear to me and I think to others with her skill, and has been extraordinarily helpful, not only in discussions in-house with the court, but also I think in terms of our discussions with the CEO's office regarding a budget agreement that we have proposed to the commission. And I think that she has been a resource for them as well. We also have seated in the audience members of our executive team who are vital to what we do in the court. In the front row is our executive court administrator, Zanelle Brown. She has been our executive court administrator since 2014 and has led us, I think, with great skill. And the Supreme Court has recognized that. She has been appointed to any number of task forces by the Supreme Court. And so we are indeed fortunate to have someone who has such high regard statewide being our executive court administrator. Seated to Ms. Brown's left is a familiar face, I'm sure, for many of you, our former Chief Judge, Virgil Smith. And we have utilized and welcomed Judge Smith's experience and wisdom in helping us in our discussions and negotiations with the county, and think that he can be of great value to us as we go forward in a topic that I will talk about in a few minutes, and that is our getting a second courthouse so that we can become a one judge, one family court. Also in the row behind them are Toby Horner, who is also with the CFO's office, and he has been a very valuable assistant for us, and his expertise with regards to collections and dealing with grants and has provided great insight for us through the years here as well. And seated to Mr. Horner's left is Violet Leonard, who is our former CFO, who not only brings great wisdom and expertise, but also is sort of our court historian with regards to our agreements that we have had with the county over the years. Next to Ms. Leonard is Alyssa Shannon, who is our deputy court administrator for the criminal division, which is our largest division in the court. And she oversees the day-to-day operations in that court. And also is someone that I've worked with for about the past 10 years and count on her good judgment and guidance. And to Ms. Shannon's left is Richard Lynch, our general counsel, who helps us navigate potholes and other speed bumps along the way and provides us excellent advice as to how we can go forward. So with that, if I can, let me start by indicating that, as I'm sure all of you know, since 2011, the court and the county have had several budget agreements that have extended over several years. And the court and the CEO's office have had negotiations over an extended period of time. And we were both in agreement that there is value in having this kind of multi-year budget agreement. It provides a predictability and a stability in terms of what the general fund dollars are and what money is going to be requested from the county. It also provides the court with the kind of independence that, as we all know, back from middle school, when we learned about the three branches of government, we are the independent branch of government with the justice system, and we are in fact the ones who need and welcome the notion of our own independence. So the bottom line with regards to the proposed four-year budget agreement is that we focused on what we thought were two critical goals that we wanted to achieve in this new agreement. There has been a fund balance that the court has. That fund balance has come from the earlier 2015 agreement from 2015 through 21. And using some of the fund balance, we will be using that to goal number one is to improve compensation for our staff. It will be used and be not only a benefit to those who are our current employees, but it will in fact help us recruit and it will help us retain employees. And the agreement is set out in a fashion that it will be sustainable over this four-year period. The second goal of this agreement, the critical goal as well, is the notion of using fund balance money for the purchase of land or efforts to make land usable for either the new criminal justice courthouse or for a second courthouse that is needed that would bring under one roof the family domestic, juvenile, friend of the court, and civil. Now, this is, I think, certainly a journey for us. This is not something that we expect is going to happen by summer of 23, but the agreement puts us on a pathway with certain benchmarks for the court and the county to work collaboratively on this particular journey. The collaboration involves the court and the county agreeing on a consultant. It has the court and the county working together with regards to making efforts to try to find a site for this second courthouse. And also for us to work collaboratively to, in fact, reach and find financing for this new courthouse. The new facility that we're talking about, this new courthouse, we would expect would have a smaller footprint. And we recognize that there aren't many positive things that came out of the horrors of the pandemic. But one of the things that did come out is that the pandemic has forced us all, number one, to learn how to use Zoom and to work remotely. And that has had a number of benefits. One of the things that has been a benefit for us is that, to take, for example, friend of the court matters, instead of requiring people to take a day off from work and to come down, pay for parking, come to court for maybe a 30-minute type of proceeding, now they can come in via Zoom. That has created a situation where the no-show rate for hearings has dropped significantly. It's also provided an opportunity for a greater access to justice so that more people will not have their job certainty or their childcare or whatever interfered as greatly by being able to participate remotely. Also, the agreement for a new courthouse will give us the opportunity to bring the other divisions of the court, other than the criminal division, under one roof. And that will bring any number of efficiencies to the court, not just in terms of court staffing, but also in terms of clerk's office staffing, we would imagine, the Wayne County Sheriff providing security, their staffing. You're not going to need as many supervisors, et cetera. So we think that this will provide a benefit for all. I do want to mention that the driving force, of course, for a second courthouse is the Lincoln Hall of Justice. And I know that's no shock to everybody. I will tell you, and I know I'm dating myself here, but back in 1975, early 1975, I think it was, and I was in the prosecutor's office. That was back at a time when if there was a request by the prosecutor's office to waive someone as a juvenile to try them as an adult, you had to go over to the Lincoln Hall of Justice to have that hearing, and they had to be waived over to adult court. And I remember going over in early 1975 as a prosecutor, and I thought the building was pretty horrible then. And it hasn't gotten any better. And I think that quite frankly, we're running out of duct tape at Lincoln Hall. And I think we need to move forward. And I think that all of us would subscribe to the notion of the fact that we say that we care about children and we care about families. But when we say that we care about children and families, and we have them, we bring them to a building to have rights determined and responsibilities determined, and the elevators don't work, and the bathrooms are closed to a great extent, and you don't know whether it's going to be 90 degrees in there or 40 degrees, we're really not walking the walk. So we think that the journey for the second courthouse needs to start, and we think that the agreement, this 4-year agreement that the court has worked out with the CEO's office, is in fact in our best interest. I think that the agreement that we have worked out shows in a very demonstrable way that there can be collaborative efforts with different sections of county government, and that we can create win-win situations where boundaries are respected, the court's boundary and the commission's boundary and the CEO's boundaries, but also finding that common ground where we move forward to serve all of our Wayne County residents in a way that is respectful of them and to which they are entitled. I want to talk a little bit about one of the questions that was raised in the information packet that was submitted to us, and it was questions about how has COVID impacted the court system. First of all, let me say, you may hear, because I know I hear, people will come up to me and say, Judge, when are the courts going to reopen? And the fact of the matter is, we never closed. There was a period in March of 2020 when we just dealt with emergencies, but we have been open and we have been doing business. Are we doing business as we were pre-pandemic? Not yet. We're getting there. But that also is sort of a work in progress. But I do want you to know that the proceedings that we have, people are able to view what is going on, certainly civil, criminal cases. They're all on YouTube. And in some of our juvenile and family domestic cases, there are limitations by statute that limit what people can in fact see. But we are making things visible to the public. But I do want to say that one of the things that I think as a court we are proud of is the fact that we have dealt from a health and safety perspective very responsibly. Our thanks go to you, commissioners, for your approval of increased money for juror pay and also providing us with funding so that we can provide box lunches for jurors so they're not going out to restaurants and maybe being exposed more to COVID. But I would like you to know that we do in fact debrief jurors after trials. How did you feel? Did you feel things were safe? How did things run? Do you have ideas, things we could do better? And I will tell you that jurors have been very positive in their response. They have felt protective. They have felt that we have kept them safe. And they're even grateful for the box lunch that we throw in there. But I do want to tell you that that may not on the surface seem very important. But I will tell you what happens as a practical matter. People come down for jury service. They go home. They tell their neighbors. They tell their friends. They tell their relatives about what their jury experience was like. Many of you probably have encountered the situation. They find out you're a public official. You may see them at a social gathering and they'll ask you, how do I get out of jury service? I just got a notice, right? Well, we want people to come. That's critically important for us to be able to do that. But we do take, I think, very positive accolades for how we're treating jurors. That's very important. I will tell you that COVID certainly has impacted us as it has, I think, throughout the economy. There are people who during COVID decided to retire or resign, and it has become challenging to fill staff positions. That has been a challenge and continues to do so. We are, in fact, very good at monitoring our health and safety of our staff that are here at the building. But I will tell you that COVID has certainly hurt us most significantly, together with, I think, compensation concerns in the area of courtroom clerks and deputy sheriffs to provide security in our courts. As I'm sure you probably know, by statute, the Wayne County Sheriff's Office is required to provide security to the circuit court. We have been getting data now on a daily basis from the Sheriff's Department. I will tell you that over the last 3 weeks in Frank Murphy Hall of Justice, where we have the most trials, jury trials in particular, in the last 3 weeks, we have been down anywhere between 17 and 24 deputies per day. That means that the sheriff's department has to go beg, borrow, and steal from other sheriff positions in other parts of the department. And that's a challenge, and in my view, not sustainable. We're kind of, we don't want to be sort of rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. But having 17 to 24 deputies per day in one division of our court, having that kind of shortage is certainly an area of concern. Another concern, and once again, I'll use the criminal division as an example because that's where our largest backlog of cases is. We do not have enough courtroom clerks to man every courtroom. That has forced us to have judges take notes and gather information that will be of value to the clerk's office so that we make sure that the appropriate entries in our case management system are collected and provided to the clerk. But the idea that a sustainable future of having courtrooms operating without a courtroom clerk really, in my view, is an unsatisfactory way to conduct the court's business. And I'm sure you'll hear from the county clerk and the sheriff's department, and we certainly work as collaboratively as we possibly can with them to achieve that. Let me return, if I can, to the issue of compensation. Back in 2019, because we were concerned about the fact that we were having a growing number of vacancies that we couldn't fill. And it's not just that the jobs weren't interesting or people didn't want to do them. They didn't want to do them for the amount of money that we were able to offer. So we reached out to get a study. Now, we recognize that we're not going to compete with what compensation they're paying in New York City or San Francisco or even Oakland County to some extent because their resources are different than we have here in Wayne County. So we reached out to the National Center for State Courts. That's an organization that the court has utilized on projects before. And we know the county has as well. And the National Center was even brought in as an expert and a consultant by the county when the plans for the new criminal courthouse were being developed. We felt that that was an organization that did, in fact, have the kind of credibility for both sides. As a result of the National Center's study where they compared jurisdictions similar to the Third Circuit in some ways, as well as looking at neighboring jurisdictions, we were able to come up with a report from the National Center that set out what they thought were appropriate pay ranges for the type of tasks that were performed in our court. And they indicated that you're not going to get to the top of that all at one time. You really need to make that a journey, if you will, of some sort. And to some extent, it needs to be an issue where there is a midpoint. And with regards to that midpoint, that's where we're going to be able to hit, we believe, at the beginning of the new fiscal year with the commission's approval. And we will, in fact, be able to then be competitive and be able to be in a position where we can, in fact, attract and retain the kind of very capable people we want and need so that the citizens of Wayne County get the kind of service that they need. Finally, I want to let you know that the court has been innovative. We are looking for new ways for us to go forward. We have, in fact, adopted as of a project we started collaboratively with the county 3 years ago to work on a new way to do juvenile justice. We have been working on that, and we have Wayne State University doing an assessment and evaluation on that. And interestingly enough, when the Supreme Court's Juvenile Justice Task Force came out with a series of recommendations, it turns out we were already doing almost every single one of them, years ahead of the recommendation. And not only is it a service to our court and the people we serve, but it also, I hope you folks will join in recognizing that it shows that Wayne County is a leader and that when there are issues of concern, problems that need to be solved, that people can look to Wayne County as to how to solve it. So we've taken some real leadership in the juvenile area. And to just take my last maybe 15 seconds to say on an issue that I know is near and dear to the heart of our commission chair, Chair Bell. For years, the Third Circuit Court and the Probate Court have been working collaboratively in an effort to decriminalize mental illness with regards to the nonviolent individuals in the community. We have been, I think, very successful, and we have laid, I think, the groundwork for increasingly innovative work that is looked to by many other places throughout the state and throughout the country. So thank you for indulging me, my bragging about our court. And I also want to close by saying my thanks to all who were on the county executives team who worked with us in terms of putting this proposal for a 4-year budget together. It was a lot of work. Some of our sessions were happier than others, but you know how that goes. But it was, in fact, I think, in the end, a collaborative work that we believe will be a plus for the county as well as for the court. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll start our, we're running a little bit behind, but we could talk about your court all day long, all the good things that are happening. And I appreciate your time. I will call on our Vice Chair of Ways and Means, Commissioner Baydoun, to start us off on the questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Judge Kenny, for a very well and articulated, informative presentation, and congratulations in advance on your retirement. And I thank you for your many years of service to the residents of Wayne County. As you know, Judge, the pandemic changed our lives forever, it seems. What percentage of the cases are currently being handled via Zoom versus in person?
Commissioner, I don't have the exact percentages, but I can give you sort of an overview, if you will. I will tell you that starting, for example, with the criminal division, where we have 22 judges, all 22 judges are on site. And effective August the 22nd, the overwhelming majority of those cases will be handled in person. There are instances where our arraignment judges who do the initial court appearance will do them by Zoom. But we feel that the best way to break the backlog, since many of the folks are out on bond, is to bring them into court as we did pre-pandemic to work them out. Now, on the other hand, sort of the other extreme, if you will, the overwhelming majority of cases in the juvenile division are being handled remotely. And the reason for that is, if you have been to the juvenile hall there, you recognize how small those courtrooms are and those referee rooms are. And just from a health and safety perspective, it just doesn't work because many of those cases involve multiple people. I would say the civil division sort of falls in the middle. And Judge Frizard is the presiding judge in the civil division, in addition to being the chief judge pro tem. And many of the motions, if you will, are being handled remotely. But the civil division is conducting trials and hearings in person as well. The family division is doing most of their work remotely, although effective the day after Labor Day, they will be in person 2 days a week. The family domestic division, those cases are handled more remotely because it gives a greater access to justice. We probably have 2/3 or more of the family domestic cases where one or both of the parties are self-represented. So we're dealing with people who otherwise would have to take off work to come down or arrange childcare, so that works better. But it's all a work in progress, and we're trying to be as effective as we can be, mindful of the fact that the Michigan Supreme Court has handed down an administrative order saying that the courts should operate with remote work as much as possible. So I hope that
Yes, you
answers
did.
your question.
Thank you, Judge. Final question. By the way, I'm in full support of building a second courthouse because of what you described, the condition at the Lincoln Justice Hall. You also talked about a smaller footprint for the second courthouse. Is this mainly driven by the newly created environment of the pandemic or other factors for creating a small footprint?
I think the smaller footprint is going to be as a result of the pandemic. For example, right now in the civil division, all of the courtrooms have jury boxes, except the chief judges. Well, I think what we have found out over time is that not many of the civil cases actually go to jury trial. And so not every courtroom is going to need to have a full jury box. It's not going to have a jury deliberation room. There may be adjustments. Certainly, we may need to add more smaller rooms where attorneys can have settlement discussions. But that's sort of a basic example, I think, of why there would be a smaller footprint, because what existed pre-pandemic, we're finding out we really don't need that exact space now.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Commissioner Marecki, and then Commissioner Kinlock.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and congratulations on your up and coming retirement. We're going to miss you, but I'm glad I will see you in Livonia. So I'll see you around there for sure. I just had a couple questions. We already had a presentation by the Sheriff's Department, and we did not hear about the 17 to 24 deputies that are down in the court. But what happens, that's pretty significant. What happens when that occurs? Do you have to stop different events or?
Well, fortunately, there is a great working relationship we have with the Sheriff's Department. And in particular, I know that our Deputy Court Administrator, Alyssa Shannon, who is here, stays in constant contact with the Sheriff's Department. So they know, like the day before, how many courtrooms are going to be working. I mean, we have 22 judges. That doesn't mean, especially, like in August, that all 22 are going to be operational. Some judges are going to be on vacation, so you're not going to need a deputy there. But it does involve communication between our court administration and the Sheriff's Department in terms of what is needed. And of course, it is prioritized as to exactly what needs to be done. Fortunately, based on our relationship, we have been able to cover, I think, courtrooms when we needed deputies. We've had a couple of instances where there was only one deputy in a courtroom, but that's the outlier kind of case. But as we have unfolded and opened up more in the courts, we have, I think, based on our good relationship with the Sheriff's Department, given them enough advance notice as to when we're going to need more deputies, and they have juggled things around. But I did want to put it on your radar that this is a very real problem.
And they have real issues with FMLA. I mean, they have many, many people out with that. So it's ongoing. And so you were talking about the compensation, which is great news. Is there any other factors about retaining people or hiring people besides just compensation? Are there any CBA type things that kind of inhibit that whole process? Or do you really think it's just the compensation packages? And are we that far off from what the recommendations, the report that you got, significantly that far off where you really think that's going to attract and keep people?
Well, I guess I would start out by saying it's probably not any one single factor. I'm sure there are lots of factors. One of the things that has been a consequence of the pandemic is that people who were working from home for some extended period of time, many got to like that. It's a pretty good commute many times. The idea that you can not have to come down and pay to park. You're not going to pay City of Detroit income tax if you're a non-resident, for example, is certainly in the mix. I think it's probably kind of a stew of issues that are a factor, but I will say that bringing us to a midpoint with regards to what would be viewed as marketplace competitive salaries is a good step along the journey. It's not the destination. That's not the last stop on the railroad, but it does set us off on the journey that I think will help us. And I think that if as we continue to be successful, as we move along in this budget agreement process, there will be opportunities to to fashion what's the next part of the journey. But I think there's no escaping the fact that if we are not competitive, we are going to find ourselves in a position where, as creative and as hardworking as our existing staff is, it's going to become harder and harder to deliver quality service.
Thank you, and thank you for everything you do for Wayne County. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Kinlock.
Madam Chair, I also wouldn't join in and congratulate you on your retirement and your long history of service to the county and the community as a whole. You've just been a tremendous judge when you've had to, preside over cases, and especially those cases that have become very public. And so definitely appreciate your service. One thing that I understand is that there is a serious issue, and you did state that this morning, regarding the vacancies as it relates to the clerk positions within the court. And it did not pass over my head the fact that how you describe how judges have to be creative in both presiding over a case and then doing the work of a clerk, but some of the work of the clerk as far as those notes and keeping track of the case and all of the work and the focus that the judges need to be, that's associated with making sure that justice is rendered. And so my question to you is, as it relates to this budget, how are you addressing? I know I just heard something about the compensation piece, but how are you, I guess, immediately addressing the concerns as it relates to the vacancies that's in the clerk positions, and also the extra workload that the judges are having to deal with? Is there a component that deals with some temporary measures that's able to be put in place besides having judges do, the juggling that they're doing with such serious business in front of them?
Well, thank you, Commissioner. We are being creative, and we have had a number of meetings with the county clerk's office, and I will indicate to you that they are willing and trying to be as creative as they possibly can as well. I do think that what may very well happen is, maybe the county clerk's staff and I or someone else from the court will come back to see you and talk about their immediate concerns, because while they are working in the courtroom, they are Ms. Garrett's employees. And as I talked about earlier on, there's the notion of boundaries, and we're respectful of her boundaries just as much. But I do think that there are some, a few, I should say, other creative opportunities we're trying to think of to see if that might be a help. My sense, candidly, is that much of it has to do with just compensation. When someone who works in the clerk's office at the 36th District Court, 2 blocks from Frank Murphy Hall of Justice, is getting paid more than a courtroom clerk in Frank Murphy. People have families, people have lives they have to take care of, as good as they may be, and as grateful as we may be to have them in our courtrooms. If they choose to go somewhere that's better for their family, that's what it's going to be. I think for the clerk's office, and I'm sure as I indicated to Commissioner Marecki, rarely are these kinds of problems just one type of problem. But I do think that for the clerks, as it is for our staff and for the deputies, I think dollars have something to do with it.
And that secondly, the can that continues to get kicked down the road as it relates to the Lincoln Hall, the agreement that you said you have in place. And I believe you said as it relates to possibly utilizing some of the fund balance of $900,000, utilizing that for land acquisition, as well as for the one judge, one family court piece. When do you believe that funds will actually be dispersed or, from the fund balance? When we start seeing money coming from that fund balance and actually being able to determine exactly what the cost will be? I mean, how soon will consultants and all those various factors be brought into place based upon that agreement?
I think, Commissioner, that the court and the county will agree upon a consultant. I think it's within like 60 days of the agreement being signed. And then once the consultant is hired, then there's a time limit in terms of when what that design is going to look like. Because obviously looking for funding, there's obviously the need, well, what's that building going to look like? How much, how much square footage? Where is it going to be? That kind of thing. So there is a sense of urgency that both sides recognize in terms of getting a consultant and getting the consultant to meet with all of the stakeholders to get that design of that second courthouse in place.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure Chair Bell will be having meetings on those as that develops later on. Commissioner Chair Bell, you're next.
Thank you. Thank you, Judge. Just want to say congratulations again on your retirement. It's been an honor working with you as we go through the version programs and just working for the citizens of Wayne County. You will be missed, and welcome, Judge Prashar. We will look forward to working with you as well. Things change, but I think we'll all have the one mission of working for Wayne County and bringing Wayne County forward as our mission. So thank you for the service that you rendered upon the county for at least 26 years. Just want to let you know that I too am in favor of the new courthouse and what that will bring to the citizens of Wayne County. Like you said, since 1976, you knew it was bad back then. So, almost 50 years later, we know we need a new courthouse for our children and our families. So I am all in favor of what that looks like and moving that forward, as well as the increases in personnel for salaries. That's something that I think will be a first step in attracting and retaining employees. As you speak, there's other things involved with that, as parking, benefits. There are a lot of other things, but I commend you on you realizing that salary is also a part of that. And I look forward to hopefully keeping and retaining some of our employees because of that. I didn't have a question, but I take that back. I do have a question, but I think I'm going to save it for later on, because I think it may go towards our budget director. When I look at the budget, I see there's a 20 million difference from the fiscal year 2021-22 amended budget and the 22-23 budget, about $20 million difference. So I would like to know, don't have to now answer now, because I know we have 2 more presentations. How is that going to affect your operations? And I can speak to Lynn maybe about that. And then Drew, why is there a 20 million decrease from the amended budget of last year and the recommended budget for this year? So I'll expect a written response will be fine.
Mr. Mark Gabo?
Yeah, actually, Madam Chair, that's actually rather a simple answer because $25 million was taken out of the circuit court budget for indigent defense, which will be handled otherwise. If you look at the two major departments of the circuit court, Fund 835, which is primarily funded by the general fund, there's a 5% increase, and Fund 836, which is funded primarily from grants from the state and feds, there is a 4% increase. So if you exclude the removal of indigent defense from the overall circuit court judge or circuit court budget, there was actually an increase. So it's, and we will be talking about indigent as the next department presentation.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
We have to answer that question then. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate that.
That was an excellent answer. I agree.
You agree with that, Drew? Thank you.
We have very good staff. Commissioner Anderson next, and then Commissioner Baker McCormick to finish off.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome to Judge Kenny and your staff and your members of the court. I'll add my congratulations too on your pending retirement. And you've had a great career and a great service to this county. And I certainly appreciate it as others have expressed here today. I did have a couple of questions. How have Zoom hearings in certain circumstances, how has that saved, what savings have come as a result of that? I think you mentioned about people coming downtown, the convenience issue in that, but what is it amounted to in net savings to the county? Is there any idea, or do you have any idea what that's amounted to?
Commissioner, I don't have any kind of dollar savings right now. I don't know if we can pull that together for you. If we can, we'd be happy to do that. But let me give you this example. I think that it is a savings, if you will, for the constituents that we serve. Traditionally, pre-pandemic, for example, Friday, like in the civil division, it would be like the courtrooms would be packed with lots of motions to be heard. Someone who, or let me back up and just give you a moment. And I know Commissioner Kinlock is familiar, is very kind with his comments, but he knows that I had a lot of the hot button national election issues in 2020 to deal with. And I will tell you that on many of these election issues, there are a limited number of attorneys who appear on those cases. And I've had a number of them this year. And many of the attorneys who have appeared are attorneys who work in Lansing. Now, the fact that someone from Lansing doesn't have to drive down to KMAC, pay to park, come up, argue for 15 minutes in front of me, get back in their car, drive all the way back to Lansing, that's really not the best use of their time. But if I tell them, I'm going to hear your matter today, Thursday, at 2:00 in the afternoon on Zoom, they can do it from their office. They can give their 15-minute argument. I'll make my ruling. They go back to what they're doing. That's a better use. And I think it becomes particularly better use in the family division and friend of the court, where people are oftentimes representing themselves, either because they're too poor and they can't afford a lawyer, or, they're just, their economic circumstances don't allow them to do it. To be able to take a break from work and call in and do a 15 or 20-minute hearing works great.
I remember you mentioning that before, and I can appreciate that. That's beneficial to the folks that have to come to court. I just wondered if there was any net savings to the court itself by not having everyone come in and doing it by Zoom. But maybe she can just. I'm just thinking. The reason I'm asking this is are we expecting this to continue, at least for the unforeseen future? I mean, we really have no estimate of how long this will be, but it sounds like it's likely to continue to some extent, maybe for years to come. So I'm just trying to get an idea
Sure.
of the savings that might come as a result of that to the county.
Yes, and as I said, we'll look for that and find out, and we'll get back to you on that. I will say this, Commissioner, realistically, Zoom is here to stay. If the pandemic upped and left from planet Earth tomorrow, we wouldn't pack up all our Zoom equipment and put it in the attic. It works for folks. And I think until we have the next technological transformation, I think it's here to stay.
And I know it was touched on how much FMLA has affected the sheriff's department. How much has it affected as far as the personnel within the court? Has it been a big problem, the FMLA of employees of the court?
I don't know the answer to that right now. Our human resource person is perhaps I think our executive court administrator, Ms. Brown, can answer that for you, Commissioner.
And I just asked that question for the reason that how you're dealing with it, how you've managed it, I guess, in the court.
For the FMLA piece, when the pandemic came out, we advised staff what was needed to file for FMLA if they had some special circumstances. We do have a number of employees who had FMLA before that time. There were additional employees because of chronic conditions who apply for FMLA. So we have granted that as well. FMLA has probably been an issue that we've been juggling throughout the court since I've been there, and making sure that the work gets done. During the time of the pandemic, addressing it has been challenging, but we continue to do it. We haven't, I don't think, have kept like the numbers in track, but we can go back into our personnel records and do that. But that is one of the factors where we see in a lot of departments, you're expecting for 5 people to show up for work, 3 called in for FMLA, so you're scrambling to do what 2 people do. You scramble and you have 2 people doing what the 5 would normally do. So it does impact the backlogs that we have. So it is an issue that we have as a court, as an organization, and continue to try to address it.
I'm glad we have you working there at the court, because I don't think the judge, I think he might have been very conservative in his comments compared to what I know that you do too. And I just, I appreciate that you're there, and I hope we're not going to see another retirement at the end of this year. So
no, I have already had a conversation with Judge Frazard. She and I are going into 2023 together. And one other thing that I think is really important, just as far as vacancies, like in our front of the court, there's like over 100 vacancies for the 200 positions that we have. And with FMLAs on top of that, of course, that means that the services that we need to deliver are not being delivered as timely. We continue to explore what's the technology, how can we help people get to the services that they need. As the chief pointed out, the Zoom hearings has been one avenue in doing that. We realize that everything isn't fit for Zoom. We're looking possibly at how to bring some services into the community. And definitely when we get to that second courthouse, because of technology, because of Zoom, we won't need as big a footprint as we have. We realize that a lot of things will be happening and we'll be looking at a monitor instead of people standing in front of us. But we'll be able to weigh all that out once we have an architect and be able to sit down.
thank you. Judge, I did want to ask you one last question. How we're moving way along on the jail project, the new Justice Center, and what's your impression of how things are going as far as how it affects the court, as far as the facilities? Are you pretty satisfied with what you see happening with it? Because I know like I said, we're getting very close to maybe the point that we'll be opening up the court or the building. And I just wondered how it appears to you.
Well, I think the new criminal courthouse is going to be a big improvement over what we have at Frank Murphy. I think it will certainly meet the needs that we have. Technologically speaking, it's going to be a big upgrade for us. We've been taking tours of the construction, and I understand you folks are going next week, and we're going to look to see if we can tag along as well and see how the construction is coming along. But I really do think it's going to serve the judges, the staff, and the public a lot better than we have at Frank Murphy. So we're excited about the opportunity for a new chapter.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Just for housekeeping purposes, we have Commissioner Baker McCormick and Martha G. Scott still to speak. I just want to let those who were supposed to be scheduled, the Indigent Defense Services at 10:45 and the treasurers here at 11:15. We will get to you, but all the questions are important, so please bear with us. Thank you. Commissioner Baker McCormick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Congratulations to you, Judge Kenny, on your soon-to-be retirement. And also congratulations to you. Is it Frizard? Okay. And I like the idea that you're here. And I think it's important in the county succession planning that we make sure that we bring up and help the person that's going to come behind us. So I like that.
Commissioner, if I can,
Sure.
before your question, in terms of the lengthy negotiations we had with the county executive's office in coming up with the 4-year agreement, Judge Frizard was at the table as well, because we all thought that it was important that we have as smooth a transition, and not only that, and as understanding a transition as possible.
Yes, and that institutional knowledge that you bring and you have is so important to share. So I want to thank you for that. And the other question, or the question I had, was the zero bond issue, where we're moving or transitioning, or I guess you already have. For those that you do not require a bond at all, are they tethered or are they not in most cases? Can you explain how that works?
Sure. If I can back up for just a moment, I think what has gotten local media attention has been an agreement between the 36th District Court and the ACLU with regards to their change in bond policies. Cases come to the Third Circuit Court in the criminal division after they have succeeded through the district court level. We do, in fact, have a pretrial services department that provides investigations and recommendations to the judges regarding bond. And then it really is up to the judge to determine whether or not tethers are going to be required as a condition of bond. And as I'm sure you can imagine, there are any number of different reasons why tethers may be required. If someone is going to get out, for example, on a bond where the charge is domestic violence, there are tether arrangements that can be made where there will be a notification that goes off if they get within a certain distance of the complainant's residence. Or there may be someone who the judge may think should have a curfew. If you're 19 years old and there's really no need for you to be out at 3 o'clock in the morning unless you're got a job on the midnight shift or something like that. So that is left to the discretion of the judge. We know, quite frankly, there's a lot of discussion about the whole issue of pretrial release. There's the concern about community safety, of course, because, turn on the 6 o'clock news almost every night in major cities across the country. There's all kinds of sad stories. But Commission Chair Bell and I have had a brief discussion about the notion that I think that there is value, and I think that your Commission Chair would be the perfect person to lead it, to have a county-wide discussion about bond. I think that it just makes sense that people who are similarly situated in terms of their background, their, people who can speak on behalf in the community, what kind of criminal record or substance abuse history or where, if people are similarly situated, your sex, your race, your ethnicity shouldn't make a difference. There shouldn't be that kind of disparity. But I do think that, like many of our social issues and criminal justice issues, there are many layers to them. And that, when we talk about, we need to commit and be concerned about community safety, we need to say, well, what does that really look like? Not just afraid, what is community safety? And so I think that is an ongoing discussion that I know that the Third Circuit Court is certainly willing to collaborate and work with the commission and anybody else in county leadership. But it does seem to me, as a former prosecutor for 20 years and as a judge for 26, these issues are complicated.
And another question I had is in reference to the vacancies that you currently have. What are the majority of the positions that, and I don't think that was in our data, that are available? Is it you talked about the sheriffs and clerks. Are there any other areas of deficiencies that you see? And is there testing required in those areas?
All right, if I can defer, I think to the biggest vacancies that we have are in the friend of the court. But I think Ms. Brown, our executive court administrator, can address that. And I think maybe even some numbers if you need. Lynn Roberts can share that as well. Okay.
Thank you.
I think I pushed it on this time. In the front of the court, there's 252 positions. 117 of those are currently vacant. We've done some research and it looks like our biggest issue becomes like in our clerical positions, the ones that don't require degrees, they come through the doors and most of them leave before 3 years. A piece of that also ties to the fact they're in the collective bargaining unit that hasn't received any increases like in 6 years. So if we've hired you in, and some of those positions were hired in at less than $15 an hour, making less than what people make at McDonald's. So as soon as you get enough training, you're going to go somewhere else and look for a job. What we have experienced since 2021 has been also the number of people who have left our friend of the court from the attorney positions and gone to our neighboring county, Oakland County, or other places to do the jobs there because the packages have been more attractive. For the positions that start off like case managers, which would be pretrial services specialists, domestic relations specialists, so they require a degree. We are looking to see, is there something else that we should be looking for? Maybe some experience, so people who are in the organization possibly could get into those positions. But of course, that'll be part of what we're looking at as far as our research as an organization, and also having conversations with unions and things to make sure that we get that right. So we realize that the court that we were prior to the pandemic can't be the court that we are going forward, and trying to be right-sized. Now we're looking to see what else is there on the table we can do.
So there is testing for some of those
There are
positions?
testing, the positions are posted on the Third Circuit Court website.
And has there been any thought around not testing or reducing? I guess, well, you did talk about.
I think the
reducing
testing
the
is valid because that is one objective criteria, and it does test for certain competencies. But we are looking at, okay, so what are we requiring regarding experience and qualifications, and should that be shifted and changed?
A little bit, okay. And are we at 15 for, I assume, for all employees now?
That is what we're trying to negotiate with the unions, and we have some ongoing negotiations, but we're not there yet. But that is part of the plan and part of the midpoint overall scheme too, that we would not have any positions that would be paid less than 15.
So we have some currently that are less.
Currently today, there are some people who are making that. There are some people who have families and still receive public assistance after they come and work 40 hours down here. So yes, it is an issue we have to address.
And are we partnering with law schools?
We have a number of our partnerships with law schools, community colleges, and things like that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. If you find additional information, please feel free to share it with us. We're running a little bit behind right now. Martha G. Scott, Commissioner Martha G. Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Judge, for bringing all your staff here today. And most of them I know have been around for some time, so they're smart, and that's why they've been able to make things work.
Absolutely.
And certainly that Zoom, one who first of all didn't like Zoom, but I think it's here to stay, and I'm glad that it's here to stay because it helps in so many ways. And so I'm just grateful for that. I know the FLMA, as I spoke with the sheriff then, it's kind of challenging for them too, to work it out. So hopefully we can find out a way how we can work with FLMA. I mean, it's a needed situation, but we still have to work with it. Well, I won't hold up because we got a lot, but I just want to say thank you for all your 26 years and all that you've done. Really appreciate you. And I know Lynn, I've known her for a long time, and I know Lynn is a great worker. I've known Judge Fassard for a long time, so I know that she will do a great job. So I'm just looking forward to continuing to work with you. But one of the main concerns is let's get that Lincoln Hall of Justice redone, okay? You know, it, like you said, it's been a long time, and it's horrible over there. So hopefully we can get that done. Somehow whoever is working on it and all groups work together on it and get it done. All right. So
Amen to
that. Thank you for being here today.
Judge
It was
Kenny,
good to see the old chief judge too. I followed in his footsteps, so thank you, Madam Chair.
thank you. I have a feeling that I'm going to ask you to come back to another Ways and Means Committee meeting because there were some issues that I wanted to cover that I will not take the time today, but I would like you to come back at another time for Ways and Means when we can delve into some of the programs in more in depth.
Absolutely. Thank you. We welcome that opportunity. Thank you so much, Commissioner.
Thank you. Your excuse for today, unless Mr. Mark Gabo, do you have anything else for this
Just a
particular
couple of,
presentation?
Quick comments. Actually, kudos to the Third Circuit and the administration on the four-year funding agreement. You seem to have taken care of in one fell swoop two of the major concerns of Wayne County, and that's the Lincoln Hall adjustments and then the retention and attraction of employees. So kudos to that. The only comment I have about the compensation is you mentioned that you're taking monies out of fund balance for 4 years for compensation. Just a note of caution, using one-time monies for annual operating expenses can be kind of long-term problematic. I hope that by the end, at least by the end of those 4 years, we will have found a way to fund those compensation increases through operations, because again, it can be problematic.
I think perhaps when we return, we can discuss that issue at greater length, because our team, particularly the insight and planning that's gone on, and that Lynn Roberts and Violet Leonard and Toby Horner bring to that issue, I think can address your concerns.
I know that
We're
there's
happy
great
to do
skill
that.
in that department, Judge, so I have no concerns about it. I'm just a cautionary note.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mark Abel, go ahead and you're excused. And Mr. Mark Abel, please introduce our next presenters, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next group is the Indigent Defense Services Department, which actually, as I had indicated before, was budgeted with the Third Circuit last year. At this time, they are budgeted in a separate department. So I welcome Indigent Defense Service Department to come forward.
Good morning. Please introduce yourselves. Start over.
It on now? Can you hear me? Okay,
Yes.
sorry. Robin Dillard Rusaw, the Director of the Indigent Defense Services Department. With me today, to my left is Angela Peterson. She's our assigned counsel administrator. And to my right is Kimberly Dorsey. She is our fiscal grant manager. And we're prepared today to discuss everything in detail. If I may, Commissioner.
Yes, go
Okay.
ahead.
So just to give a general overview of our department, as this body is aware, we are the newest department within the county. Our department manages both the assigned counsel, which is the private bar attorneys who take cases out of Third Circuit Court, the defense attorneys, as well as the Public Defender Office, Neighborhood Defender Service, Detroit, which is managed through contract. And all of this is to ensure compliance with the Michigan Indigent Defense Commission standards. The qualification process of attorneys is handled by our department. There is a 9-member-led assignment committee that reviews qualifications every year to determine those attorneys who are qualified to accept cases. We have officially taken over that function from Third Circuit as of fiscal 22. I'm excited to have qualified over 190 attorneys to accept cases. As it relates to Neighborhood Defender Service, again, that is managed through contract. We are currently in contract negotiations with Neighborhood Defender Service for the upcoming fiscal year. That should be coming before this body shortly for review, but we continue to work in partnership with them as they deliver the services on the public defender side, which is approximately 25% of the cases out of Third Circuit. With that being said, as it relates to our budget information, you all know that our budget is approved every year by the MIDC prior to coming before this body. We are excited to announce that for fiscal 23, we have gotten approval of that grant with the state way ahead of the end of the fiscal year. Historically, you've seen that contract come before this body into the next fiscal year due to delays with MIDC commissioners having questions about our budget and other topics. But this year we made a concerted effort to meet with the MIDC staff consistently and weekly since the submission of our plan in April. And we were excited to get that approval in June of this year, which is the first time ever that that's happened. So when we do get that contract that will come before this commission, it will be in alignment with the county's internal budget for the first time. So we're excited about that. As it relates to some upcoming things with the MIDC, we were made aware that there is a bill pending in the House right now to amend the MIDC Act. What that will do is bring juvenile delinquency under the purview of the Michigan Indigent Defense Commission. What that means is that we will not only then be handling felony adult cases, but we will be handling juvenile cases as well. That is slated to possibly pass and become effective in fiscal 24. We are listening and waiting for further direction from the MIDC. We suspect that they'll have more information at the August meeting that's coming up this month. And we will gladly share anything that we hear about that bill and any further items that may come of that. Also, we continue to monitor compliance with the MIDC standards. As this body is aware, there are 8 standards that have been passed by the MIDC, 5 of which were passed by LARA, which means an official implementation. And there are 3 that are currently pending with LARA, Licensing and Regulatory Affairs of Michigan. We suspect that standard 8, which deals with attorney compensation, will pass this year. Again, we await further direction from the MIDC, and we likely will hear about that at the meeting as well. As it relates to our department activities for this year, our fiscal 22 involved a great deal of technical development with our case management system. As this body is aware, we are attempting to transition most of the functions out of Third Circuit Court as it relates to the assignment of attorneys to cases, as well as the payment of attorneys and other service providers. We are attempting to create our own system. The vendor is Legal Server. We're working with that vendor consistently, weekly, as we onboard to determine what type of developmental needs are necessary to sort of stand in the shoes of Third Circuit's current process. Some of our limitations have been specifically criminal defense agencies are not considered defense justice partners. So we are unable to tap into the Third Circuit's Odyssey or get any information from that system due to requirements with the law enforcement information. So we have had to find workarounds, if you will, to sort of get data and get other information. And we continue to work with the vendor to develop a system that will be cohesive and will be feasible to us to serve the functions that we need to do to be in compliance. We've also, in fiscal 22, worked extensively with management and budget, with our budget analyst and with Drew, the budget director, to align our internal budget with the county's budget. I think as Mr. Abbo mentioned, most of the funding was under the court's business unit. So a lot of what we've done this year is transition and adjust those funds to fall under our department so that we can properly report to the MIDC and have the money in the proper fund and the proper business unit to pay attorneys and provide other services. So we've spent a great deal of time in doing that. I credit Kim Dorsey with making it very plain for the MIDC. For the first time ever, we've gotten feedback from them that they were happy to see our budget, happy to see that it was easy to read. Not sure to take that as a compliment, but I guess we will. But they have been very forthcoming in that they understand and can see Wayne County's budget at this point. We've also continued in fiscal 22 to work with Third Circuit Court again on the transition of services, on data collection, specifically as it relates to case assignments, because these are things we have to report to the MIDC on a quarterly basis. And we continue that partnership. They've been very gracious in assisting us with whatever we need for our reporting purposes, and we're appreciative of that. And we also continue to work with the sheriff as it relates to professional visits with clients for the attorneys, either via Zoom or in person. And we continue to develop policy and procedure as it relates to that. For fiscal 23, we're excited to implement a second chair program through our department. What that means is that we will be able to qualify attorneys who accept lower tiered cases to sit with more seasoned attorneys to become more proficient, so that in the following application year, they can start applying for the tier 1 and tier 2 roster. And the tier 1 and tier 2 deals with homicide cases, child abuse and neglect, criminal sexual conduct cases. And it's vitally important because those tiers historically have lower numbers of attorneys that accept those types of cases. So we want to make sure that we're qualifying attorneys, that they're able to accept those cases, that they have the training and necessary tools to continue to be successful in handling those types of matters. And we also will be implementing in 23 a social worker defender unit. Social workers within the realm of criminal justice is not a fairly new concept, but in terms of receiving funding and using them in the manner that we could on the criminal side is a fairly new development. But it all goes hand in hand with a holistic defense approach. And typically what they're used for is for mitigation, getting services for clients so that they don't reoffend. They work hand in hand with the attorneys to help develop plans. So we're excited to be able to bring 3 social workers into our department's purview that will assist assigned counsel, much like our public defender office who employs social workers. We're now sort of leveling the playing field for both sides of those management tools that we currently have. So we're excited about those upcoming things for 23. And that concludes my little presentation, and I welcome any questions.
I love everything I hear from you. I think being a holistic service is what we need. And so congratulations, and my hat's off to you for doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Mr. Mark Abbo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Great presentation. Thank you very much. I just had some questions about funding. I'm going to take you back to last year. Last year, the funding by the state was just over $17 million. And the allocation from the general fund was about $7.6 million. The allocation from the general fund represented about 30% of the total budget. There was a movement by the state of Michigan where they wanted to hold their funding level constant and let communities, including the counties, commitment increase. And so that our percentage would grow from 30% to a higher number year by year by year as cost increase. When I'm looking at the budget this year, the cost to the county, the allocation from the general fund is increased by about $60,000. So it's roughly still about 7.6 million, 7.7 million. And the allocation from the state is 31 million. So now the allocation from the county has dropped from 30% last year to just under 20% this year. And I noticed that the trend in future years is consistent, where the county is paying, the allocation from the general fund is about $7.7 million. Is that, I mean, is that trend going to hold, that our allocation and our amount is constant and that incremental cost will be funded by the state? Is that something that they have actually acknowledged, and is that the trend that we can expect going forward?
Well, I'll say this, Mr. Abbo. So that local share is governed by statute. And just so that I can read this, if I may, it says that the local share is determined if the consumer price index has increased since November 1st of the prior state fiscal year The local share must be adjusted by that number or by 3%, whichever is less. So that is where the local share dollar amount is calculated moving forward. As it relates to any conversation on the local share from the MIDC, we have not heard anything as of late. There was a work group that was started, I think, early last year. I believe Commissioner Killeen might have been a part of that as well, where they were discussing increases to the local share. But since that time, there's really been no conversation. As we've seen, when we submit a budget to the state for approval, they determine the local share based on that formula. And as you pointed out, Mr. Abel, it's sort of been consistent, some minor increases here and there. We expect perhaps that in fiscal 24, there might be an increase due to inflation. But other than that, there has been no conversation. So.
But the confusion is the formula applied to the funding by the current funding by the county or by the total budget of the Indigent Defense Department? So is 3% increase of the total budget that we will take on, or is it 3% of what we are currently funding?
3% of what we were currently paying prior to the 3 years.
Okay, so
Yes.
that's a positive change.
Mhm.
If that is actually the formula, so it would be 3% of the $7.6 million.
Correct.
That's wonderful.
Yes. And unless we hear something different, as I stated, they had a work group. We haven't heard anything from it, but certainly if we hear of any developments related to local share, we will absolutely share them.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions, Commissioner Baker McCormick?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The services and thank you so much for appearing here today. The services and contractual services line item. Can you explain what that is? Is that the overall services of the department, or what are the contractual services, I guess? That's what I'm really trying to clarify.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. So under our services and contractual services, we have payments to investigators and experts.
Your name and title for the record.
Shirley Dorsey, Fiscal Grants Manager. We have under the services and contractual services is payments that we make to the investigators and experts, the attorney fees, and that's including the private bar and our contractor NDS, as well as the sheriff. And we actually pay for sheriff protection in the jail.
Thank you. That was my question.
Thank you very much. Done such a good job. You answered most of the questions in your presentation. That was very, very well done. Thank you very much. As always, if committee decides that we need more information, we'll be happy to have you back.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Anderson, I spoke too fast.
One quick question. Could you enlighten us on your analysis and preparation of the approved list of attorneys? Are they reflective of all of Wayne County? Okay.
Yeah, so what we do is, and I can speak to this from last year, we put out an application process similar to what Third Circuit had been doing for years, where we ask for attorney experience, qualification, trial practice, everything related to what attorneys had normally been doing in Third Circuit Court. That application process was across the board. It was advertised. Anybody from anywhere could apply to be on Wayne County's roster. The 9-member-led assignment committee then takes those applications, reviews the qualifications. We have laid out exactly what is necessary to qualify for a tier. It's similar in stature to what existed again in Third Circuit Court as it related to training and experience. But because there are some other things that have been implemented due to the MIDC requirement for qualifications of attorneys, we've made some adjustments. For instance, in previous years, you had to be a member of the criminal defense bar here in the county to take cases. we can no longer require that as a part of MIDC funding. There are other things as well, such as the number of trials you have to qualify for a tier 1 or tier 2. We've made some adjustments there, and we've added some additional training components so that attorneys are all on the same level, but if they want to take higher tier cases, they would need additional training in order to qualify for those additional tiers. So the process is very extensive and involves 9 members, as I stated. Judges can no longer serve on the committee in a decision-making role due to the standard 5 independence from the judiciary, but we do have judges serve as advisory members for these attorneys as well. Because as you can imagine, it's relevant to hear directly from the judges as to attorneys' performance in the courtroom. But the 9-member-led committee is made up of attorneys who come from all different, 3 from our department, obviously, and then the private bar, and then some other attorneys that we've solicited, and they are sort of the final decision makers on that list.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Thank you, Madam
Welcome.
Chair.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This concludes this part of the presentation. Next, we're going to have our treasurer, Mr. Mark Abbo. Would you please introduce them?
Yeah, the next department is the Treasury. Our treasurer, Eric Sabri.
While you're taking your seats, I would like to announce that we may take a 5-minute recess during the presentation, depends how long it goes. So we can bring our lunches in here and eat at our desks. And of course, all our guests would be welcome to do the same. Mr. Eric Sabri, go ahead.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Eric Sabri, Wayne County Treasurer, and to my right is our Chief Deputy, John Vieira Adams. To my left is LaShonda Thomas, who's a consultant, project consultant with our office. She's a former Deputy of Finance, and she's working with us while we search for a replacement, for her replacement. So we're fortunate that she's continuing to work with us. I'd like to give just a short introduction to what we're doing. I wanted to just cover 4 areas in the office before we entertain questions. The first is collections. And then I would talk a little bit about our investments and earnings through investment, foreclosure prevention, and audit preparation. So with the collections, what we did, we looked at the last 12 months from August to July, August of 2021 to July of 2022. We went back 18, 19, 19 and 20, 20, 21, and 21, 22. So the pattern of collections works like this. In 18 and 19, our office collected about $249 million in delinquent taxes. Then we had the beginning of the pandemic in the middle of the 19-20 year, and our collections went down to $231 million. Then we rebounded last year to $271 million in collections. And this year, this past 12 months, we collected $255 million. So we kind of we're leveling off. We had a big increase in last year because of the COVID the year before. So we collected about $255 million, and that's a little bit better than we did before the pandemic started. Now we have various payment options in our office. We have, you can pay, of course, by making an appointment coming into the treasurer's office, or you can pay online. You can pay at one of the 100 kiosk locations throughout the county. You can pay by phone, or you can also use the old-fashioned way of putting the check in the mail and sending it in through the postal service. And before the pandemic, we collect about 70% of our revenue in the office. Actually, people came in and made their payments in the office. We have appointment-only system now. So we've reversed over the last 2.5 years. It's been reversed. People are paying more out of the office than they are in the office. We are collecting about 20% of our revenue in the office instead of 70, and we're collecting the rest of it through the mail, 50% or a little more online, about 20% the kiosk, and then the rest by phone and mail is about 12% of that revenue is coming in through phone and mail. So it's reversed. The way people pay has been reversed, but our collections have not decreased due to the change. Actually, it's been really convenient to be able to regulate the number of people that come to the office. If you come to the office without an appointment, if there's no one there, then we'll make the appointment on the spot and see that taxpayer. But if it's busy, that person has to come back, they have to make an appointment and return another time. We also inform them when they come in about the kiosk and online payments, so that if they're not familiar with it, they can take advantage of that. Looking at our investments, the interest rates really went down to zero a couple of years ago, and they're bouncing back now. Interest rates are increasing. The Fed is increasing, increased already, I think, 3 times this year. So we're starting to see an increase in our revenue. Typically, this time of year, we have about $900 million in our investment portfolio for the county. But currently, because of the ARPA funds that the counties receive, we have about $1.4 billion in our portfolio. So we are starting to see an increase in the interest rates and, of course, our revenue. We have this year, in the 3 quarters that we had for this fiscal year, we've got about $4.4 million in investment revenue. And last year, it was just over $2 million for the whole year. So the interest rates are coming back, increasing. And so we should see a little more revenue. But as we spend the money that the federal government sent to the county, of course, our portfolio is going to drop. And we'll head back to more of a normal portfolio, which is a little bit less than $1 billion. Now I'll talk a little bit about foreclosure prevention. Last year, we started off the year with a little more than 43,000 people who were in danger of foreclosure, 43,000 parcels. And we ended up foreclosing on 4,000 parcels this year. And out of that 4,000, 1,800 of them were occupied properties. 1,400 were occupied by people who did not own the property. Either they were tenants or just relatives of deceased owners or previous owners, or just occupants. And we didn't know their legal status. The other 400 were owner occupants. We had several efforts to reach all of these individuals. If any of these owner occupants had applied for the Michigan Homeowner Assistance Fund, they would have been taken out of foreclosure. But unfortunately, they did not apply. We saved about 5,400 people through 2 programs this year. One was the Michigan Homeowner Assistance Fund, which is federally funded, dollars that are managed by Michigan State Housing Development Authority. This allowed people who were within 150% of the area median income to receive, to be eligible, if they had a hardship during COVID, to be eligible for payments of the 2019, 2020, and 2021 taxes, delinquent taxes. So all we required this year to get out of foreclosure was that the people apply for the program, because the program wasn't approved until very late in our cycle. Foreclosure cycle was approved in February, and our deadline was March 31st. So we knew that they were not going to be able to evaluate all of these applications in such a short time. So our position was, if you apply for the program before March 31st, your property will be removed from foreclosure. So a lot of people did that. Also, the pay-as-you-stay program, which it started in 2020, for anyone who is exempt because of their income. They go through the assessor's office, apply for exemption. If they're exempt because of income for property taxes, then if they had a delinquent tax previous to this exemption, this pay-as-you-stay program would basically extinguish about 80% of their back taxes. But if you live in Detroit, the Dan Gilbert Foundation was paying off the balance that you had. So if it was 20% left, 15% left after the formula, which is tied to the taxable value of the property, was calculated, then what would happen is the Dan Gilbert Foundation would pay off the balance. So over a 2-year period, over 10,000 people were removed from the foreclosure list because of this program. So between the Michigan Homeowner Assistance Fund and the Pay As You Stay program, last year, 5,400 people were removed from foreclosure. So if we didn't have these two programs, we would have had close to 9,000 people getting foreclosed. 9,000 parcels, let's say, instead of saying people, we'll say 9,000 parcels, because about half of our foreclosures are vacant properties and just vacant land. So that's about half of of the 4,000, a little bit more than half of that 4,000 is vacant land and vacant property. So I don't want to say people, I just say parcels. Now, the next area I want to just mention is audit preparation. Just briefly mention, last year we were late for the audit. We had some problems being late for our audit. So this year we have a couple of consultants working with us. Also, Ms. Thomas, of course, is still helping us. And we are preparing to be on time for the audit this year. This past Tuesday, 2 days ago, I met with Rod Taylor from the State Treasury's office, as well as Audit Manager Vaughn. And we briefly talked about what we're doing to prepare so that we're not late for our audit this year. And they also said, let them know early on, and they will offer as much help as they can to make sure that we're good. So I know, Drew, you're glad to hear that. Your former colleagues.
Yes, sir.
In Lansing. So they were very gracious and offered to help us make sure we're not late for the audit. So we're doing everything we can. That concludes my brief presentation, and we're open for questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Treasurer Sabri, for your presentation. I just have a couple of comments. First of all, thank you very much for acknowledging the issues with the audit. I think that's real important that we get ahead of that issue. So it's very much appreciated. I want to just bring to the attention of Ways and Means one of the comments, responses to our questions regarding the transfer of the delinquent tax revolving fund to the general fund. You've indicated, although it's not in the budget, that for 22-23, you will be able to transfer $30 million to the general fund. I think that is actually very, very good news. And that will be one of the technical amendments to the budget this year, adding $30 million. So that is very much appreciated. And also you've indicated that $6.4 million will be available for this fiscal year, whereas again, zero was budgeted. So again, very much appreciated.
We didn't anticipate that we would have any money this year to transfer, but fortunately we have 6.4 million. Yes.
Very good. So I really only have one general comment, and I know that it's subject to litigation, so I'm going to be careful about how I ask the question. But the question is, what can you tell us about the Raffaele case, and when we might expect that the issues surrounding that may ultimately get resolved?
Can't tell you very much, but I would like to ask Chief Adams to answer that question. She's really on top of all the legal issues in the office, and I think she can answer it better than I can.
Janvier Adams, Chief Deputy Treasurer. I don't know if I'm exactly on top of all of the issues, but Raffaele is the seminal case in litigation throughout the state regarding what we would call surplus or excess proceeds from the auction of properties. So Wayne County was not a named defendant in Raffaele, but all of these cases which have come after, and several of which are against Wayne County, are all dependent upon the outcome of Raffaele. And as you know, the Supreme Court decided Raffaele, I think it was in 2002, that there was a violation of the Constitution in taking the excess proceeds from property owners. So it was sent back to the district court for a decision on retroactivity or prospectivity, how it would be applied to claimants. It has been heard in the district court in Oakland County. Judge Langford Morris ruled that it could only be applied prospectively. So, and of course, that has been appealed by the plaintiffs bar. Okay, there are also a number of cases proceeding in federal court, some of which have ruled that it will be applied retroactively. And the question is, how many years will it go back? So there is a lot of uncertainty about the outcome and the impact of Raffaele throughout the state, while it's still undecided on those very important financial impact issues. So there's not much that we can tell you about when it will be decided because there are so many cases at the state and federal level being heard simultaneously throughout the state. As far as the impact, we have reserved what we believe is a sufficient amount of money to cover what we believe would be a class of plaintiffs going back 6 years, which by statute was what I think was originally determined, was 6 years. There is still some argument over that. One federal court has ruled 3 years. Another court has ruled 2 years. Another state court in the Proctor decision, which is also on appeal, has ruled that claimants who had their claims in at the time of Raffaele would be the only class entitled to those proceeds. So, like I said, there's a lot of uncertainty on when and what the impact would be. And so we just continue to follow it, monitor it, and work with our counsel inside and outside closely to stay up to date. Any more questions?
No, it sounds very complex. A lot of moving parts. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome to the treasurer and your staff. The Raffaele case. Currently, when you just talked about foreclosing on properties, are we setting aside the excess funds until we decide?
So in 2020, the legislatures passed a new law based on the Raffaele case that implemented a process for claiming excess proceeds. So after 2020, any property owners whose properties were foreclosed in auction submit what they have titled a notice of intention to claim proceeds. And that is done by July 1st of every year preceding the auction. Based on that number of claims and what the actual auction results are, we will be withholding those funds that are related to those claims that are filed. And we have to hold those claims for 2 years. It basically is a 2-year process. Once they submit the notice to us, then we provide them further instructions before December 31st of this year on filing a motion with the court. So they have to then file a motion with the court, and then the court has a hearing to determine who among any interest holders in the property might be entitled to surplus proceeds.
Just speak into the microphone,
Oh,
please.
I'm sorry. How do you notify the owners that there's an excess and that you're holding the excess? Is there a notification
So
process?
that's part of the notification that will go out before December 31st after the auction. So that's when we'll notify those who are entitled or who have filed an intention to claim that there were surplus proceeds.
Right, but how do you do that? Is it in the legal news? Is it?
No, it's
send
direct.
it
It's
just
direct
directly to
notice,
their
yes.
home?
We'll send correspondence directly to the address of record.
Okay.
Also,
And the claimant's address, I'm sorry.
Okay. What I'm asking, if they're no longer in the home because it's been foreclosed, if it's been foreclosed.
That's why I corrected myself and said the claimant's address. So because it's based on the claim that's presented, the intent to claim that must be filed with our office before July 1st, preceding the auction. They submit their name, the property address, the parcel number, what their interest in the property is, and a mailing address. And so based on the address we have in those claim forms, that's how we will notify them. We have also notified all foreclosed property owners this year by card that they were entitled to submit the intent to claim. So we notified them that their property would be on the foreclosed list, and we also notified them of the process for submitting a notice of intent to claim.
Also, there was a program that the city of Detroit had where tenant occupied homes that were being foreclosed, that they could potentially pay the taxes and stay in the home. Are we doing anything like that?
The city of Detroit has what they call the Make It Home program. And the Make It Home program it started, I think, 2018 tax year, or auction year, I should say. And what the city does is through the right of refusal process, they will select certain properties that are occupied by tenants, that were occupied by tenants. The owners got foreclosed, the property is still occupied. The city uses a nonprofit to kind of vet the individuals and the condition of the property, make the decision to take the property through right of refusal. They will pay the taxes to the Wayne County Treasurer's office, and then we would deed the property to them. And then they would work with the nonprofit and the tenant to try to make that person a homeowner. So it's called the Make It Home program. And it's helped over 500 people in the city of Detroit who were tenants to become owners of property. So I think that this program had been dormant for a couple of years because we didn't foreclose on any occupied properties in 20 or 21. So now they're going to, I think, to reinstitute this Make It Home program. Yeah.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Baydoun.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Sabri, for the presentation. And allow me to thank you here publicly for all your assistance. I have reached to your office several times to try to keep some people in their homes, and your office was very cooperative and entered these homeowners into agreements, and they're still in their homes. I know as a real estate broker, the last thing that your department wants is to take someone's property, and I know you've done a lot to keep people in their homes. In 2021, you just mentioned we did not foreclose. We're expecting to foreclose. Well, this year you foreclosed on 4,000 homes, you mentioned, correct?
4,000 total parcels, 1,800 occupied properties.
Okay.
Yeah.
Usually you have the foreclosure sales is in September, correct, every year?
Yes, we schedule 2 auctions a year.
2 auctions, I mean. Yeah.
One in September and one in October.
Do we know approximately how many properties will be auctioned in September?
Well, I think we should have the final count for the right of refusal properties that the cities and townships take.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be something less than 4,000. If they're going to take a few. I don't have the exact number. We'll know by August 15th, though.
Okay. Again, on the Raffaele case, you mentioned that you're taking into consideration going back 6 years. Is that 6 years from what date?
Would be 6 years from the date of the decision in Raffaele.
Okay, because there's several homeowners that keep reaching out to me in Dearborn. They lost their homes, and they're watching this case carefully. So they need to file a claim with the county treasurer right now, or should they just wait?
Have to wait.
Okay. Okay. Again, thank you for everything that you've done, Mr.
Okay.
Sabri, and I appreciate all your work.
You're certainly welcome. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other committee members or staff would like to ask a question? Thank you very much. You covered everything very thoroughly. We are going to break for lunch, but you're welcome to stay with us. They're box lunches, but members and staff, they're outside of the room. So grab your lunches and we will start back again at 12:30 with the employees' retirement system.